43 years. I want you to sit with that number for a second.
Mm-hmm.
That is over 15,000 days.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine lying to the person you sleep next to, the person you eat with, build a whole life with, every single one of those days. And I'm not talking about some big, cinematic lie.
Right. There's no secret family in Vermont.
No. No offshore bank account, no big affair that's going to blow up on the evening news.
No, it's much quieter than that. And honestly, probably much more destructive in the long run.
That's the thing. The lie was so small, so mundane, that when the truth finally came out, there weren't any plates thrown.
No screaming match.
None of that. There was just silence, the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that happens when you realize you've been, acting out a script for half a century.
And that silence is where we need to start today. We're looking at a really fascinating piece of source material from the Before It's Too Late channel. It's a first-person account titled, "At 87, I finally told my wife the truth after 43 years of lying."
Yeah.
The narrator is a man named George.
And look, George isn't a celebrity. He's not some retired CEO writing a memoir about how brilliant he was. He's just an 87-year-old guy sitting on his porch looking back at what he calls the lies we tell ourselves to get through the day. And I have to be honest, when I first saw the title, I thought, okay, here comes some scandalous confession. But what we got was, it was uncomfortable. It felt like looking in a mirror.
It hits a nerve because this deep dive isn't really about deception in the legal or moral sense. It's an analysis of emotional self-preservation.
Right.
We're going to unpack how those tiny reflexive lies, specifically the phrase, "I'm fine," how they calcify over decades, they turn into walls.
Yeah.
And George's whole point is that while those walls keep out the pain, they also keep out the people we claim to love.
He figures this out, but he figures it out really late. He's nearing 90. So the mission here is to look at George's life as a bit of a warning shot. He's basically telling us, don't wait until you're my age to drop the act.
Exactly. The core tension here is between being strong and being known. And we usually think those are the same thing, that strength is maintaining a certain image. George is going to argue the exact opposite.
So let's go to the porch. It's a Thursday afternoon. George and his wife, Eleanor, are having coffee. It's a scene they've played out 1,000,000 times.
Sure.
And Eleanor asks a question she's asked 1,000 times before. She says, do you ever regret not finishing your degree?
Now, you have to understand the pattern here. For 43 years, George has had an automated response to this. It's like a reflex.
Totally.
He smiles, he waves it off, and he says, "No, it worked out fine. I did all right. No regrets."
It's the good husband answer, right? He would be provided for the family. He had a career. Everything is stable. Why rock the boat? But on this specific Thursday, the script it breaks. He looks at her, and for the first time, he doesn't do the wave off. He says yes, every single day.
Wow. That pivot is massive. He didn't just admit to a regret. He admitted to a fundamental dissatisfaction he'd been hiding for 4 decades.
And he kept going. He told her, I regret that I quit. I regret that I was too proud to go back. And then he said, I regret that I told myself it didn't matter when it actually mattered to me more than almost anything.
Let's pause on the motivation here because this is crucial. Why did he lie for 43 years? I think the easy assumption is that he was protecting Eleanor.
Yeah, that he didn't want her to feel guilty or he didn't want to bring negative energy into the marriage. That's what I would tell myself. I'm doing this for the family. I am being the rock.
Right. But George is brutal with himself in this reflection. He admits that was never about Eleanor. It was about his ego. He was too proud to admit he had failed at something. He was too proud to admit he wanted something he couldn't have. So he constructed a reality where he didn't care. If he pretends it doesn't matter, then he can't be hurt by it.
It's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
But here's the part that really gets me. Eleanor's reaction. Because if I'm Eleanor and I find out my husband has been harboring this deep, soul-crushing regret every single day of our marriage, I might feel a little betrayed.
You'd think so.
Yeah, I might feel like, who are you? But she wasn't angry.
No. She put down her coffee, and she said something that I think broke George's heart more than anger ever could have. She just asked, why didn't you tell me? We could have figured something out. You could have gone back.
We could have figured something out. That line is just haunting.
It completely dismantles the lie. George thought he was protecting the status quo. But in reality, he was robbing them both of a solution. He realized in that moment that by protecting himself from the shame of quitting, he robbed Eleanor of the chance to support him. He denied her the role of a true partner.
He uses that word robbery. He says, I'd robbed her of knowing me fully. And that's a heavy charge to lay on yourself.
Uh-huh.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Okay.
Is it really robbery? Or is it just life?
Hmm.
We all have things we keep to ourselves. If I tell my partner every single insecurity I have, don't I become a burden? Nobody wants to be married to a bottomless pit of need.
That is the common fear, and it's a valid one. But there's a difference between dumping your emotional garbage on someone and letting them see who you actually are. George isn't talking about complaining about the weather.
Right.
He's talking about a core piece of his identity, his ambition, his regret, that he deliberately hid. By hiding it, he presented a polished, two-dimensional version of himself to his wife. He made himself a character in her life rather than a human being.
So he was performing George the content husband instead of just being George.
Precisely. And the cost of that performance is intimacy. You cannot be fully loved if you are not fully known. Eleanor loved the character George played, but she never got the chance to love the man who was hurting. George denied her that.
And once that dam broke with Eleanor, George couldn't unsee it. He started looking around at the rest of his life, his friends, his neighbors, and he realized he'd been doing this performance everywhere. This wasn't just a marriage problem.
No, it's a societal one. He brings up his colleague, Frank, and this is a classic example of male friendship in particular, but it applies to everyone.
Yeah, Frank. They worked side by side for 22 years, ate lunch together almost every day. And George says their conversations were basically a loop of safe topics. Sports, the weather, how the pot roast was last night. You know?
It's the elevator conversation stretched out over 2 decades. Safe, reliable, completely surface level.
And then the inevitable happens. Frank retires. 6 months later, he has a massive heart attack and dies. George goes to the funeral, and Frank's daughter comes up to him. She says, "Dad always talked about you. You were his best friend. He said you were the only person he could really be himself around."
Which is just gut-wrenching because George is standing there thinking, I didn't know him at all.
The daughter even adds, he wished he'd told you some things, but he never did.
That is the legacy of the I'm fine culture. Frank felt closest to George, yet even with him, he couldn't break the seal. He died with his stories, his fears, his real thoughts locked inside.
It's what George calls a prison.
Yeah. We think we're being professional or low-maintenance friends, but we're actually ensuring that we die unknown.
It makes me look at my own friendships. I have guys I've known for 10 years, and I know their favorite football team, but I don't know what keeps them up at night. I don't know what they're afraid of.
And that's the trade-off. It's easy, it's comfortable, but it's hollow. George realized he had wasted 22 years of lunches on meaningless chatter when they could have been actually connecting.
Then there's the story of Walter. If Frank is the tragedy of friendship, Walter is the tragedy of, what, stubbornness? Pride?
I think it's the tragedy of dignity. Walter is George's 82-year-old neighbor. He lives alone. His kids visit maybe twice a year.
Right.
And whenever people ask about it, Walter puts on this brave face. Oh, I understand. They're busy. They have big careers. I don't want to bother them.
We've all heard that. We've probably all said it. I don't want to be a bother.
Exactly. But George sees the truth. He sees Walter standing at his window on Sundays watching other families in the park, and he looks absolutely devastated. It's pure loneliness.
So George, emboldened by his new honesty, he pushes him. He asks, "Walter, have you ever just told your kids you're lonely? Have you asked them to visit?"
And what happens?
And Walter got offended. He bristled up and said, "I don't want to be a burden."
There it is, the burden narrative. It is the single most effective silencer we have. We convince ourselves that expressing a need is an imposition.
But let's look at that. Is it not an imposition? If I call my busy kids and say I'm lonely, I am putting a burden on them, aren't I? Now they have to feel guilty and drive out to see me. Walter isn't wrong.
He's not wrong that it requires something of them. But George's counter-argument is, what is the alternative?
Yeah.
The alternative is that Walter sits in a room and rots in his own loneliness while his kids assume he's perfectly happy. George asks a question that just stops you in your tracks. Are you protecting your dignity? Or are you participating in your own loneliness?
Participating in your own loneliness. That's rough.
It implies agency. Walter isn't just a victim of busy kids. He is an active participant in his isolation because he refuses to speak the truth. His kids might want to know he misses them. They might be relieved to have an honest conversation. But Walter decides for them. He decides his silence is a gift when really it's a wall.
It's interesting how this trickles down, too. It's not just the older generation. George talks about how this silence infected his relationship with his own son, David. And this story This one is a slow-motion car crash.
It is. It's a misunderstanding that lasted for 30 years.
So, the quick backstory. When David was in high school, George offered him a spot in the family business. It was George's dream to work with his son. David said no. He told his dad, I want to do my own thing.
Which George interpreted as independence. He probably thought, good for him, striking out on his own. He respected it.
Exactly. Fast forward to present day. David is 59. He's visiting George. And somehow this comes up, and David finally drops the act. He admits, Dad, I didn't say no because I wanted to do my own thing. I said no because I was terrified I wasn't good enough.
Whoa.
I thought I would crash to business and disappoint you.
Think about the weight of that. For 30 years, David has been carrying this narrative that he was inadequate, masking it as independence.
Right. And for 30 years, George has been carrying the rejection, thinking his son just didn't want to work with him. Two people loving each other, separated by a lie that was meant to protect feelings.
Exactly. And when the truth came out, George didn't get mad. He just said, David, you could never disappoint me. The source says they talked for 3 hours after that.
And the key detail George notes is that when David left, the room felt physically lighter.
Lighter.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because lies have mass. Unspoken truths take up psychological space. They require energy to maintain. Every time they were in a room together for 30 years, that unsaid thing was sitting in the corner. Once it was said, the air cleared.
It seems like the common thread here is that we think we're hiding our weakness, but we're actually just hiding ourselves. Which brings us to the daughter. This interaction was different because it wasn't about the past, it was about the present.
Right. His youngest daughter calls him. She's in a crisis. She feels like a failure in her career. She's overwhelmed. She's crying. Now, the old George, that I'm fine George, would have gone into fix-it mode.
Oh, totally. Buck up, kiddo. It's not that bad. You're tough. You'll get through it. That's the dad script.
It is. We try to minimize the pain because seeing our kids in pain makes us uncomfortable. We want to stop the crying. But George didn't do that. He broke the script. He told her, I've felt that way too many times. It's terrible. I used to sit in my car and feel like I couldn't walk into the office.
He admitted he was weak. He admitted he didn't have the answers.
And the daughter said that conversation saved her.
Why? I mean, he didn't fix the problem?
No, because he joined her in the hole. He didn't stand above the hole and yell down instructions on how to climb out. He climbed down and sat with her. He validated that her feeling was human, not a defect. By admitting his own frailty, he gave her permission to be frail. That is connection. Fixing is often just a way to distance ourselves from the problem.
So we have Eleanor, Frank, Walter, the kids. George has completely overhauled how he relates to people, but I want to get practical here. What does this actually look like on a Tuesday? Does he just walk around sobbing and telling everyone his deepest fears? Because that sounds exhausting.
No, and he clarifies that. It's not about becoming an emotional fire hose. It's about what he calls everyday honesty. It's about swapping the default lie for a small truth.
Give me an example.
Instead of, I'm fine, saying, I'm actually really anxious about this doctor's appointment. Instead of, it's no big deal, saying, that actually hurt my feelings when you said that.
See, that sounds simple, but my stomach tightens just thinking about it. Telling someone, that hurt my feelings, feels incredibly risky.
It is risky. George doesn't sugarcoat this. He says it wasn't a fairy tale. It led to arguments. It led to awkward silences. When you stop being polite and start being real, things get messy.
But he argues the mess is better than the fake peace.
He calls the old way a carefully managed fiction. And at 87, he realizes he doesn't have time for fiction anymore. He treats every conversation like it could be the last one. If he loves you, he tells you. If he's scared, he tells you. He wants to be known, messy parts and all.
He actually gives us a syllabus, too. He recommends 3 books that helped him navigate this shift. And I want to dig into these because they aren't your standard self-help fluff. He picked some heavy hitters.
He did. These choices tell us a lot about his internal process.
First up is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brené Brown. Now, she's famous for vulnerability, but why this specific book for George?
Because this book specifically attacks the hustle for worthiness. George spent 43 years hustling, trying to prove he was successful, strong, and regret-free. Brown's work is about letting go of who you think you're supposed to be and embracing who you are. For an 87-year-old man realizing he's been performing a role, that's the playbook.
Okay. The second one is When Things Fall Apart by Pema Chodron. She's a Buddhist nun. That seems like a curveball for a suburban dad.
It seems like it, but it's perfect. Chodron writes about leaning into the sharp points. When we feel pain or embarrassment, our instinct is to run or numb it. That's the I'm fine lie.
Right.
Shodron teaches you to stay with the feeling, to sit in the discomfort without trying to fix it. That's exactly what George did with his daughter. He sat in the discomfort with her.
And the third one, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
This is the anchor. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor. His core philosophy is that you can endure any how if you have a why. George's why for 43 years was maintaining his pride. That was a hollow purpose. Now, his why is connection. Frankl helps you understand that even if you've wasted time, even if you're suffering, you can choose a new meaning. It's never too late to change the narrative.
That's a powerful trio. Vulnerability, sitting with pain, and finding meaning.
It's basically a curriculum for undoing a lifetime of emotional repression.
So we're coming to the end here, and I'm thinking about the listener who is, listening to this in their car or while doing dishes. Maybe they're 30, maybe they're 60. They aren't 87 yet.
Hopefully there.
But they're probably lying. I'm probably lying. We all do the I'm fine thing. What is the takeaway? Do we just start blurting out our trauma to the barista?
No. The takeaway is to look at the cost. We lie to buy short-term comfort. We avoid the awkward moment. We save face. But George is showing us the bill that comes due at the end. The cost is isolation. The cost is that people like Frank, like Walter, like George himself, end up living parallel lives with the people they love, never actually touching.
It's the difference between being near someone and being with someone.
Exactly. And George's challenge is to risk the truth. Start small. The next time you feel a need, voice it. The next time you feel hurt, say it. The next time you love someone, don't just assume they know. Tell them why.
It goes back to that question about dignity. I can't get Walter out of my head, standing at that window.
It's the ultimate caution. You can keep your pride. You can be the person who never complains, never asks for help, never admits regret. You will be very dignified, and you will be completely alone.
The source suggests that being known is worth the risk of being hurt, because the alternative is arriving at age 87 and realizing nobody actually knows who you are.
And realizing that you robbed them of the chance to love the real you.
So here's the thought to leave you with. It's a challenge, really. Identify one small lie you're holding on to right now. Maybe it's, I'm not mad, or I don't need help, or I'm just busy. Ask yourself, are you protecting your peace, or are you participating in your own loneliness?
And if you drop the lie, what might happen? You might be surprised to find that people don't run away. They might just step closer.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Take care.